Okay, welcome to It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach with your host, Sister A. LeGree. You can find out more about It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach by logging on to our website at igbatt.com. It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith to individuals who are living with the symptoms of a negative life situation or long-term severe mental illness. Again, you can log on to our website at igbatt.com. You can write us at Post Office Box 7432, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910 to find out more about us. Today, we're going to be talking about preparation. The name of the topic is preparation. But before I get started with that, I wanted to share something with you. Many of you are familiar with what's called the National Suicide Prevention Hotline or National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And their number is 1-800-273-TALK. Well, recently the hotline has undergone some renovations or updates. And instead of now having to dial 1-800-273-TALK, individuals can just dial 988. So if you have anyone who is contemplating death by suicide, anyone who just needs someone to talk to, is not necessarily saying you need that the person's thinking about killing themselves. It could be for you, the individual. If you have any questions, it's a government federal hotline, 988, and it's when you call that number, it will connect you with a crisis center in your particular state, in your particular location. So now it's really simple, just 988. We're going to have some information about this on our website. Our website is being updated today, but it's 988. So I just want to make sure people have that. Now, if you still call the 1-800-273-TALK, you'll still get through. There's no problem. But the 988, the implementation, the rollout is designed to lead to better things, more resources. We'll see about the more resources. We'll see how that goes. But right now, this is the first step to kind of improve the crisis system throughout the United States. So I wanted to share that with people. Again, going back to preparation. It is important if you're living with a severe mental illness or severe illness that you are prepared. Okay, as I mentioned in another broadcast, 2 years ago when the pandemic first hit, I remember myself and my colleagues, we continued to work, but a lot of people didn't. And a lot of people shut down. It seemed like people just shut down overnight. I don't know how that happened, but it just seemed like a lot of things just shut down overnight. People went home. They didn't come back. They just started working from home, which is great, and I have no problem with that. But it left a lot of things undone. It left a lot of people very vulnerable. I remember me and my team, after people had shut down, we were, scrambling to try to help people find food. Now, we don't do that. We're a mental health clinic, but it was something that needed to be done because there were resources that these people used to use that were no longer there anymore because everybody shut down. So I remember us having to do that. I'm trying to figure out the medication piece and, trying to figure out, okay, how people are going to get treatment piece. For a little while, it eventually did work itself out, but it made me realize the importance of preparing. So I just want to share a couple things. We always talk about medications. It's important for you is that ask your pharmacist now, ask your doctor now, okay, how much medication can you have, I won't say stockpile, but on hand. I know with some of the medications you can't, they're very, very strict. Some of the insurance companies are very strict. They will only, if it's every 30 days, it's every 30 days. That's how it is. But you want to ask your doctors because you want to be able to have some medications that if you need to, if you can't get to your doctor, if the phone lines are down, if you can't see your psychiatrist or whatever the case is, or if you can't get to your pharmacist, that you have some medications on hand. Because keep in mind, we're talking about service here. So the psychiatrist provides a service, the pharmacy provides a service, doctors, hospitals, those are all services, meaning these are all people. So the people, if something happens, a crisis, just like you can't get out, they may not be able to get out. So you want to kind of start thinking ahead about what can I do, how can I prepare myself in case something happens again. So you always want to have those medications. You want to have phone numbers. You want to know the name of your every mental health clinic has an after-hour number, right? So you want to know what that after-hours phone number is. That after-hours phone number is supposed to be picked up after hours. So you want to know what that number is. You want to know what the crisis number is in your area. You want to know the name of your medications. You want to know your diagnosis. You want to know the name of your psychiatrist or clinical team, someone on your clinical team. You want to have this information not just for you, but for your loved one as well. You want to have this stuff written down. You want to, of course, make sure you have batteries, making sure you have, warm clothes. You want to make sure you have copies of your medical card. You may not necessarily have all your records, but your medical cards. If possible, you want to kind of save things, not just in your phone, but if you have a website, you want to kind of, you can save it in your phone, and then you can email it to yourself, so you can have it. So these are things that you want to know. You want to know who you can call in the midst of a crisis. And this is really important, not just for the individual who is living with a severe and persistent mental illness or illness. This is important for the caretaker or for the loved one as well, right? So you want to know this information, because if your loved one develops a crisis, a psychiatric crisis, the police should not have to be the first people that you call. I say this again, the police should not be the first people that you need to call. This is your loved one. Especially if you live with the individual, you want to know who their psychiatrist is. You want to know who the crisis team is. You want to know what to do in the midst of a crisis. You want to attend a couple of the sessions with your loved one, their appointments. You want to kind of get involved, so if a crisis happens, you will know what to do without always having to call 911. Because again, I think police officers, from what I've seen and witnessed, they do a good job when interacting with people who are in mental health crisis. What we hear about are the times, unfortunately, when they don't do a good job, right? That makes news. That makes news when they don't hear about. We hear about when a police officer engages a citizen with a mental health illness and things go wrong, someone is hurt. That we hear about, but we don't hear about the times that police officers, when they do engage with a person in a mental health crisis and things go well. So I've seen, in my case, and again, I worked in a mental health clinic and I've been doing this for a long time now. I would say I've never seen it go wrong. I've never seen them not do a good job or not do an adequate job. So, but again, my point is, you're with the individual. Crisis doesn't just happen overnight. Relapse doesn't happen overnight when we're talking about a psychiatric situation. There's usually some signs and symptoms that were along the way that people didn't pay attention to. Which leads me to my next thing. You want to be able to talk about what your triggers are. Whether you're the person that's dealing with or living with the mental illness or any other illness, you want to be able to know what your symptoms are, what your triggers are. And you want to be able to share that information with the people you live with people around you. You want to be able to say, okay, this is what it looks like for me when I'm preparing or I'm getting ready to have a relapse or I'm not feeling well. And you want to have that conversation. You don't want to, make everything a secret. You don't want to go away to the hospital, come back, and no one ever talk about what happened. If you have a loved one, or if it's you yourself, if you've been admitted into a psych ward and now you're home, have a conversation about that. What happened? What led up to the need for hospitalization? What were the symptoms? What were you thinking? How were you feeling? Have that conversation so that the next time something comes up, your loved one will be able to intervene a little sooner and maybe not have to call the police, because having to call the police can be traumatic for everyone, all parties involved. So again, have that conversation. This is part of preparation. Preparation, when you know you have a severe or persistent illness or severe or persistent situation, and the illness could be anything, it's really incumbent upon you, because you're the one with the illness, to take charge and manage your illness. Mental illness is just like anything else. If you're able to manage your illness, you want to have a conversation, you want to talk to people, you want to let people know what's going on. It's just like if you're a diabetic. I've seen some people who are diagnosed with diabetes, they have little mints or little candy in their bags, or they have their medications with them. They're prepared in the event that they have a relapse. We have to get to the point that we do the same thing when we're talking about mental illness, severe and persistent mental illnesses. When we talk about psychosis, psychotic or psychosis means being out of touch with reality. Individuals are not psychotic all of the time, every 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days of the week. With medications, you can start seeing some changes. With medications, you can see some decreases in symptoms. With treatment, you can see some changes. Does it mean that the symptoms totally go away? No, that's why they're severe and persistent. But you can see some differences. You can have a conversation. It is during that time when your loved one or you are not actively psychotic that you're taking your medication, you're able to engage in the conversation, that you have one. If your loved one is not able to do that, you need to do that. You should have the conversation with the loved one, because again, severe and persistent mental illnesses in particular, they come in seasons. They come in what I'm looking for. They come in cycles, right? So a person doesn't just go from being fine to out of touch with reality overnight. Something happened along the way. If you see that sudden change, it's probably maybe because of drug changes or something. But normally, it doesn't happen that way. You begin to see the changes. You begin to see the elevation in the voice. You begin to see the not sleeping. You begin to see the restlessness. You begin to see the pacing. You may begin to see the depression. You may see the mood begin to change. You may see them doing strange things like walking around in 100 degrees weather with a hat, coat, gloves, and things on. So you start seeing changes. The key word when you're talking about, especially with severe mental illnesses, the key word is change. You start seeing changes. The person will be a certain way, and then you start seeing changes in their behavior. They start noticing changes in their thinking pattern, changes in how they feel. But again, on the outside looking in, what you may see are the changes in the actual behavior. You may see the signs. You won't experience the symptoms, but you'll see signs. But the person who's living with a severe persistent illness will begin to feel the symptoms. But depending on where they are in that process, the more out of touch with the reality they become, the harder it is for them to identify when they are becoming out of touch with reality, right? So it's important for those of us who love them, for those of us who are on the outside looking in, that we begin to become better aware about our loved one's symptoms, their signs, having a discussion, getting the person to engage in their conversation, getting the person to take more control over their recovery process. And for you as the individual who are living with the illness, it's important for you as much as possible to be engaged in your recovery process. Recovery is possible. And understanding that there will be relapses. Relapses, unfortunately, goes along with the illness. Even you could be diabetic. You can have, doing great, and then something will happen. You might eat something, or a change just may happen, and your doctor may have to make a change in the medication, or you may have to make a change in how you're eating. Changes happen. When you're living with a severe, persistent mental illness, as I said before, we're talking about severe and persistent mental illnesses, or illnesses that last so long and are so severe that they impact all aspects of an individual's life to a more severe, extreme situations. So you're looking at severe and persistent mental illnesses. We're talking about changes or impact in how a person, their ability to go to school, to deal with relationships, to function in society. We talk about mental illnesses, right? You have the mental illnesses where we're looking at changes in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And then we have severe and persistent mental illnesses, which are just that. We're looking at schizophrenia. We're looking at bipolar disorders. We're looking at extreme depression, severe depression, right? So we're talking about illnesses that are a little more severe, that impact all aspects of an individual's life. And we're talking about illnesses that don't go away, right? We're talking about illnesses that you may have to live with. We're talking about like diabetes, like hypertension. Many people have to live with those illnesses. Now, some people through diet, through exercise, they're able to make some changes, but for many people, those are illnesses they have to live with. Well, understand that if you're living with a severe and persistent mental illness, whether it's you or your loved one, this is something you may have to live with until either a permanent cure is found, until, we do believe in the power of prayer, until prayer power of prayer, but more importantly, we believe in the Holy Spirit and His leading and guidance. We do that. Miracles happen. Miracles do happen. We believe that. We've seen it, but we also know that until a miracle happens, God has provided for us all things pertaining unto life and godliness. And what is that? That includes medications. That includes seeing a doctor if you need to. That includes talking to people. That includes eating right. That includes exercise. There's all types of things that He's given us in the meantime. So again, while you're waiting for God to heal you, take advantage of the things that He has provided for you to get better. Like I said, He's given us all things pertaining unto life and godliness, but the scripture lets us know that He has come that we might have life and life more abundantly. So you don't have to wait to get better. You don't have to wait until I no longer hear voices, until I lose weight, or until this happens. No, you can live your life now to the fullest, to the best that you can, utilizing the tools that we currently have. But again, talking about preparing. Another thing about preparation is think about your future. One of the things is I started looking into just insurance, and I started looking at health insurance, and I just started looking at life insurance, and just a lot of different things, not just for me, but for my friends and family and for people that I work with. And it kind of dawned on me a couple things. Number one, the longer you wait to get life insurance, the more expensive it's going to be. The longer you wait to, which is bad because it's expensive. It's an extra expense because the older you get, the more expensive it gets. So you're trying to get something that you should have gotten earlier, right? That you're trying to get now, and it's at a bad time. Because usually when you start getting 50, 60, 70, 80, you don't really have $100 a month just to give away. You don't have $80 a month to give away, right? You need your money. You need your money to do other things, but it's kind of weird. It's like at the very moment, the time of your life where you need to be saving money, where you need your money, you also need to spend it because you didn't prepare. So I'm telling you now, it's expensive. Healthcare is expensive, right? I think for many of us, we just assume certain things. We assume that the government is going to do this. We assume that the VA is going to do this. We assume that family and friends are going to do this. And it's not until we get to the point where we need it that we realize that's not the case. When you talk about generic medications versus brand name medications, some insurance companies won't let you get brand name medications. You got to get generic. And if you want brand names, you have to pay for it. Well, if you've been on brand names for a long time and now you're like 50, 60, and now you're unable to get it, it can be a problem for you, or it's challenging for you. So the thing is, what I'm saying is, take a look at now, 2022, what's 10 years from now? Take a look at how are you going to get your medications in 10 years? Will the way you're getting your medications now, will you be able to get them 10 years from now? And what I mean is, will you be able to pay for it? Will you be able to afford it? If you're dependent on the government, what type of changes will come up? You want to think about that. You want to think about life insurance. If you were to die now, who would bury you? You just assume that family and friends will do it, but if your family and friends don't do it, you'll wind up in the potter's field, right? So you want to think about that. Do you want to leave your loved ones with that burden? But more importantly, how are you going to pay for it? Again, like I said, I had this epiphany, especially with life insurance, is that it's expensive. It's expensive when you get older because you're older now, so your premiums are going to be higher. So if you don't have any life insurance, try to get it now and start paying on it so you'll have it. I think that's important. So think about that kind of stuff. If you have a chronic illness, what will happen to you if your things get worse? If you need around-the-clock care, if you need a home health aide, will you be able to afford it? Will you be able to get it? If that answer to that question is no, then what can you do now to prepare? Many of you live alone, right? So many people live alone and they like living alone. Well, when you start living alone, when you're 30, 40, 50, that sounds real good. Say, I'm living alone, I'm Mr. or Mrs. Independent. But when you get 80 or 90, living alone, that may not be as exciting as you think it is. So if you plan on living alone, being by yourself the rest of your life, and you plan to live until 80 or 90, what things are you putting in place to ensure that you can do that you can remain in your home, that you don't have to go to a nursing home? Or are you thinking about short-term medical? Are you thinking about insurance? What type of insurance do you have? What type of savings do you have? Do you have a will? I mean, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? I think the purpose of this is to get you to not to prepare, honestly prepare, or realistically prepare. I was listening to this one lady who I listened to, and she was encouraging people to buy, these snacks to put in your house. You can go to the store, and you can get these survival kits. I think they're like 30 days worth of food. And she had encouraged people to get that. And some of the people, were saying how the food was nasty because they had started eating their snacks. And she was like, no, the purpose of getting the survival kit is not for you to eat the snacks now. It's for later. Because when you need it, if you really need it, you're not going to care how the snacks taste. You're going to be, because you're trying to survive. So, again, a lot of things, we don't take things seriously. Right? We're talking about preparing. Yeah, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to put together a 7-day kit. And we just go to our cabinet and pull out stupid stuff that we know we're really not even going to, we're not even going to eat. To really think about this. Really think about what happened to me. I'm 40. I'm saying I want to live alone the rest of my life. I'm happy about it. I don't need anybody. Okay, and that's great. When you're 80, right, and you fall and let's say, God forbid, you break a hip, or break one of your hips or whatever, you're going to the hospital, right? Do you have enough money to cover yourself? Do you have enough money to pay your bills while you're in the hospital? Do you have somebody or mechanism put in place to pay your bills while you're in the hospital? Do you have anybody who will know that you're in the hospital, right? When you go, where will you go after the hospital, right? If the doctor says you have to go into, not assisted living, oh gosh, I can't forget, it escapes me now. But after the hospital and you can't go home, there's another step. And you have to go to this place and they do like a rehabilitation facility, right? You're in the rehab facility. Who do you have? Who's going to cover your bills? Who's going to help you? Social Security doesn't cover what you think it will cover. So again, start preparing now. Start thinking, especially those of you who are Miss 20-year-old, 30-year-old, Mr. and Mrs. Independent. I'm going to tell you, 50 will be here before you know it. Okay, 60 will be here before you know it. Think about it. Especially if you are living with a severe mental illness or a severe illness, how are you going to get your medications? What are you going to do? Really start thinking about it. Really pull out a pen or paper and say, okay, think about all the things that you're doing for yourself now, or the things that you're doing for your loved one now. If you were no longer able to do it, who would do it? How would you get it done? How would you get your medications? If you were unable to go to the pharmacy to get your medications, how would you get your medications? How would you do that? You want to think about that. If you were unable to see your doctor, what would you do? Who would you call? Right? And the answer cannot always be 911. It has to be think realistically about what you're going to do. Right? And I say that because I know in the jurisdictions where I live at, I'm in Maryland, but in Virginia they have a couple of police jurisdictions. They're telling people that police are not coming out on every call because of the shortage of police officers. Now they're still taking 911 calls, but they're not coming out on every call. So if that continues to be a trend, police are not going to be able to come and help you. Think about what you need to do. What's going to happen? What is your strategy? What is your plan? How are you going to get your medications? Who are you going to call? How are you going to deal with this loved one that's in crisis? What are you going to say? Prepare now. Educate yourself now. Stock up on things now. And again, the basic stuff we know about, okay? Make sure you have enough water. Make sure you have enough food. Real food, not necessarily just chips and candy, but canned goods. That you have a can opener, right? Not just an electric can opener, but a regular can opener, because your electricity may be out. Your personal papers. Start scanning your personal papers out into your computer and saving it to your internet system. Just thinking about stuff. You have to think about what's going to work for you realistically. You don't want to wait until a crisis comes and then wonder about what you're going to do. But especially for those of us And those of you who are living with a severe or persistent chronic illness, you know you have a chronic illness. It's important for you to manage your symptoms. Recovery, being independent. A recovery is about managing your illness. It's about taking control over your life, over taking control over your symptoms, and managing them. Making sure you have enough medications, making sure that you're eating healthy, you're exercising, you're doing the things that you're supposed to do. So again, the purpose of this short topic today, as we move into August, is about preparation. If you're living with a severe, persistent mental illness, remember, the words we use is recovery, right? And recovery doesn't mean that you don't have any symptoms. It means that you're able to move forward in the midst of your life with your symptoms, right? So if you're talking about recovery, recovery is being responsible for your medications, being responsible for, developing your own crisis plan. Recovery is being responsible for talking to people, for managing your illness, managing your symptoms. If you're a loved one, the same thing. Do you know what your loved one's recovery plan is? Do you know what their signs and symptoms are? Do you know what their medications are? Do you know who their treatment team is? For all of us, for all of you, do you have a will? Do you have life insurance? Do you have health insurance? Adequate health insurance? Have you really thought about what you will do if you needed long-term care, or if you needed health insurance, or if you not needed health, but if you needed medications that you couldn't get beyond the generics, right? All it takes is for some people, all it takes is one hospital visit or one surgery to wipe out their savings. Right? What are you doing? Plan, think. Again, this is Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. The topic for today is plan. Write us, Post Office Box 7432, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. You can email us at igbatt1@aol.com. Have a great day.